The Crocoduck army has reached about 8,500 people now, and well over 1,000 of them live in Europe. I also just returned from a vacation to London and Paris with Mrs. Zaunstar, which was my 6th trip to Europe, and I'll be in Berlin for work to make it 7 when I upload this video. So I think it's time that the American residents of Krokistan learn how to get along with our virtual countrymen across the Atlantic Ocean, in case you hadn't headed over there yet. I highly recommend experiencing other cultures, plus I find that racists, Islam alarmists, and Holocaust deniers don't tend to be much for world traveling, so you'll probably like most Americans you bump into over there too. A wider perspective generally leads to better informed opinions. First off, I know that a lot of you are tragically monolingual, and that's okay. I consider myself only to know about maybe 1.5 languages with my so-so command of German, but that isn't a significant hindrance to visiting Europe. Fortunately for you, English is widely spoken in most of the cities you'll want to visit, but the amount of English spoken varies wildly between countries and areas within those countries. In Scandinavia, for instance, a lot of locals barely even have an accent in English, whereas in Barcelona I've found that most people did not speak English very well at all. I found that the amount of English spoken has a great deal to do with the relative size and prosperity of the country, which often dictates whether movies and TV shows in English are subtitled or dubbed into the native language, and whether English is widely learned in schools. You haven't truly lived until you've seen The Simpsons dubbed into Polish. Do take the time to at least learn some of the most common words of the native language of the country you're visiting. Just taking an hour or two before the trip to learn how to say hello, goodbye, please, thank you, and some phrases that will help you order food and buy tickets at attractions will go a long way toward ingratiating yourselves with the locals. Learning what the locals think about their countrymen before you go around telling strangers in a pub that Kate Middleton is pretty hot, but you'd do her sister Pippa with even more gusto is highly recommended as well. Not everyone speaks their minds as eagerly as we Americans. You can learn the curse words too if you want, since they can also be fun, but don't expect people in Paris to be happy to see another clueless American when you step out of the taxi and shout, "Hey y'all, we're here! Where are the French bitches at?" When you go to Europe, keep your expectations a little in check when it comes to service. You know how the waitstaff at your local Applebee's are always happy to see you, or at least they pretend to be. Well, you can go to a place where you're about to drop $100 on dinner or more in Europe, and they will only seem vaguely interested in serving you. You'll get your food, and it will be more expensive than in the US, and tip is usually included in the check, but read about the local custom online before you assume that, because it's a bit different from country to country. Oh, and you'll have to explicitly ask for the check, or you will sit there forever. Also, to add to my previous point about language, keep in mind that your server at a busy cafe in Paris isn't interested in helping you practice your awful French. They are going to be pissed off if you start the meal with, "Oh, bonjour, garçon, s'il vous plaît, what is the word for bread in French?" Some of my favorite highlights of the London and Paris trip were the Eiffel Tower, the Catacombs of Paris, the Tower of London, the London Eye, meeting up with Landon and Cole and a bunch of the Crocoduck Army and the badly stuffed Walrus Army that got together in a pub, meeting 2 more Crocoduck Army in Paris, and an amazing meal at a 2-star Michelin restaurant called The Square on the occasion of the 11th anniversary of Mrs. Zaunstar and I. While we were there, I also gave her a custom-made ring by my friend Josh, who many of you know is Meridian Frost on YouTube. He does really great work, and I cannot recommend him enough. He has the eye of an artist in both videos and in jewelry, so if you want to commission something for yourself or someone special, I highly recommend you contact him. Even if it's just something for your mother for letting you stay in her basement until you're 40. I know a lot of you, when you think about travel, believe it to be entirely out of reach. Yes, it can be expensive, but you can do a lot more cheaply than you think. Start small and start regionally. As your means expand, so can your possible destinations. Keep in mind that there are many kinds of organized tour groups that are often cheaper and always simpler than planning it yourself. And there are other ways of staying cheaply, maybe with friends, or maybe renting an apartment instead of a hotel if you're planning on being somewhere for several days. Maybe a housing swap can work for you if you live near a tourist destination yourself. Do your research and see what can work for you. Also consider going in fall or spring instead of summer if you can. It can be hot and crowded during the peak season, and a lot of Europe is not as heavily air-conditioned as the US. Not all travelers are as into personal hygiene as you might be as well. Don't wait until you're older to start traveling, thinking you'll travel when you retire. When I was in the Swiss Alps, there were several 70-something-year-old ladies that couldn't even take the train to the summit of the 10,000-foot mountain next to the Matterhorn because of their cigarette-induced diminished lung capacity, and it was one of the best parts of the tour. There could be a lot of walking involved too, so if the longest walk you take every day is to your car, you may want to prepare a little bit, even if you're young. The last bit of advice is to check out your destinations you want to see and read about them so you know what to expect beforehand. Waiting in line a couple hours in the heat with 1,000 of your closest friends at the Eiffel Tower isn't necessary when you get advanced tickets online, for instance. Remember that annoying preachy saying about proper planning? Travel is one of the greatest joys of my life, and I wish that there were more people that were able to do it more often. Thanks also to the dozen or so people that showed up to hang out with D. Landon, Cole, and I when I was in London, and C. Jeffers 101 and Sorry Son of a for meeting up with me in Paris. I can't be everyone's travel advisor in a lot of detail, but if you're trying to get somewhere and are having trouble figuring out how to do it, feel free to shoot me a PM and I'll try to give you some advice, or at least refer you to a website that has information that can help you. Everyone has different reasons for traveling, and it could be as high a purpose as cultural understanding, or as hedonistic as visiting a red light district in a foreign land, so I won't judge you for your reasons for getting out there and seeing the world, even if it's just to catch a glimpse of Pippa's ass.